Picture this. It's 1921, you're sitting in a silent movie theater, the lights go down, and on the screen, these giant robots are duking it out. An epic battle, years before, like Star Wars was even a thing. Today, we're doing a deep dive into The Mechanical Man, this Italian film. It almost completely disappeared.
Yeah, that's part of what makes it so fascinating, I mean, only around 40% of the film still exists. They found it in some Brazilian archive. It's like putting a puzzle together, trying to figure out this lost world of early sci-fi.
It really is. And what we do have is pretty amazing. I mean, the movie just throws you right into it. A scientist creates this remote-controlled robot, super strong, and really advanced for the time. But, well, you can guess. Things don't exactly stay peaceful.
Well, no. Where's the fun in that?
Right.
So the scientist invention, it catches the attention of, well, let's just say a bad guy, a criminal mastermind. This mastermind sees the robot and thinks, hey, I could do some pretty messed up stuff with that. It's that classic trope, isn't it? The whole fear of technology going to the wrong hands.
It is. But what's really interesting is who's behind it all. I mean, we're not talking about some shadowy figure hiding in the background. It's this woman, Mado. She wears a mask and leads this whole gang. People describe her as an adventuress.
And Mado, she's not just your run-of-the-mill villain either. Some film experts actually think she's like a model for all those strong female villains you see in later Italian cinema. It's like the filmmakers were hinting at these changing roles for women, even back then.
That's interesting. And it's also kind of cool that this sci-fi thriller, it was directed by André Deed.
Right.
But he was known for comedy, slapstick stuff.
Right. It adds a whole other dimension to this story, doesn't it? I mean, Deed put some funny bits in there, but he doesn't shy away from the darker parts either. You wouldn't really expect that kind of genre blend from a director known for being funny.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what drew him to this project. What was it about this mechanical man idea that grabbed him?
Well, think about it. This was 1921. We didn't even have the word robot yet. I mean, it was coined in a play that same year, but those robots were like biological, not mechanical. So Deed was really going into uncharted territory here.
Totally. And he did it with style, too. Their robot design, even in the bits of the film we have, it's impressive. We're not talking about some clunky, wind-up toy.
Yeah.
This thing is presented as a real danger, like a force of nature that could go wild.
And Deed really emphasizes that danger. There's this amazing scene where the robot goes to a masquerade ball, and it's totally disguised, blending right in with the guests. It's this clever visual, but it's also kind of creepy, this reminder that technology could sneak into even these fancy settings and cause trouble.
It's almost like he was foreshadowing how we think about artificial intelligence now.
Right.
It can blend into our lives, do amazing things, but it also has this potential to be dangerous if it's misused. But let's not forget, The Mechanical Man is, at its heart, an action movie.
Oh, for sure. The climax of the film is this massive fight between two robots in an opera house, no less, and it gets wrecked. Deed used some pretty innovative special effects, especially for the time. Like when the robots are blasting each other with electricity. It must have been wild for audiences back then.
I bet. And Mado's death during the fight is pretty dramatic, too.
Yeah, she's electrocuted by her own control panel. It's kind of poetic justice, right? The technology she's trying to exploit, well, it ends up taking her out. But what's interesting is The Mechanical Man, it's not just a fun action flick. It's like a link between different styles of Italian cinema.
That's true. It's got those elements of the big historical epics, which Italian cinema was known for.
Yeah.
But you also see hints of those action-packed movies, the kind that were coming later.
Exactly. And that's why this deep dive is so cool. We're not just talking about one film. We're talking about this whole moment in time when cinema was changing, evolving. And The Mechanical Man, even though it's incomplete, it gives us this peek into that evolution. And speaking of evolution, The Mechanical Man makes you think about how it might have influenced other filmmakers, especially in science fiction.
I'm sensing a but coming.
Well, let's just say it's kind of a cinematic mystery, okay? You see, some film buffs think that The Mechanical Man, maybe it inspired this really famous German sci-fi film. It came out like 6 years later.
Come on, you can't just leave me hanging. Which film?
Okay. I'm talking about Metropolis, Fritz Lang's masterpiece.
Whoa, Metropolis. That's a big claim. But I guess I can see why people would make the connection. I mean, both films have robots.
Yeah.
And they're both pretty important to the story.
Exactly. In The Mechanical Man, you've got these powerful robots, right? They're fighting this crazy battle. It shows you how dangerous they can be, just physically. And then in Metropolis, the robot is more like seductive. It causes all this chaos and rebellion.
So they might look different, but they both play on that same fear. Our creations turning against us, getting out of control, maybe even destroying us.
You got it. And it's not just the robots themselves, it's the bigger anxieties about society. The Mechanical Man shows us this invention getting used by, well, basically a criminal.
Mhm.
And Metropolis shows this super advanced city, but it's falling apart because everyone's fighting.
It's kind of spooky how these films, they were made almost 100 years ago,
Yeah.
but they show these worries that we still have today. It's crazy. But is there, like, any real proof that Lang was inspired by the Mechanical Man? Like, did he actually see it?
Well, that's the tricky part. We know The Mechanical Man came out in 1921, 6 years before Metropolis.
Oh.
And yeah, it was Italian, but it's possible that Lang saw it. He was a big deal in German cinema.
True. Especially back then. Films were already being shared and shown in different countries. Maybe not as much as today, but they were getting around.
Right. And don't forget, both of these films, they were made when Europe was changing super fast. All this new technology, all this social upheaval. Makes sense that filmmakers were thinking about these things. They were exploring them through movies.
So we got the robots, the worries they both show, the fact they were made pretty close together in time, it's starting to add up. But are there any other clues, anything visual that connects the two films?
Okay, so this is where we get into, more speculation. But some film historians have noticed a few visual things that are similar.
Okay, I'm listening.
For example, remember that scene in The Mechanical Man? The one where the robot is at the masquerade ball, all disguised? Well, some people think that image, this masked weird figure, maybe it influenced the design of Maria's robot double in Metropolis.
You know what? I can kind of see that. They both have that same, like, unsettling beauty, this mix of human and fake,
Hmm.
artificial.
Exactly. And there are other more subtle things. The way they use lighting to make it dramatic, the way they show crowds in those chaotic scenes. It's not like hard proof,
Yeah,
but it makes you wonder.
definitely. It adds a whole other layer to this deep dive. It's like we're not just looking at the Mechanical Man by itself. We're also thinking about how it might have impacted other movies, the history of cinema.
That's the cool thing about studying film. You can trace these connections, these threads of influence that you might not notice otherwise.
I agree. But we got to be real, too. We're talking about a film that's mostly gone. It's totally possible that the missing parts could change everything. Maybe they contradict this whole Metropolis connection.
True, true. We can't forget that we're working with an incomplete film, but I still think it's cool to explore these ideas, even if we're not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that history is never really finished. There are always missing pieces, different ways to look at things.
Yeah.
But even incomplete, the Mechanical Man gives us so much to think about.
It really does. And it shows us that even back then, with limited resources and film being pretty new, filmmakers were trying new things, pushing boundaries, using visuals to explore these big ideas that everyone can relate to.
And those ideas, they're still relevant today. Like we said,
Mhm.
the worry about technology, the power of what we see on
Yep.
screen, the pull of the unknown, it's all there in the Mechanical Man.
So true. But there's one thing about the film we haven't talked about yet, and it's something I find really fascinating.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It's that the fact the film is in pieces, it actually makes it more powerful in a way. It makes us, the viewers, have to work harder to understand the story. We have to participate more.
That's an interesting way to look at it. When we started this deep dive, I thought the missing parts would be annoying, like it would be frustrating. But now I kind of see it as a cool opportunity.
Exactly. Instead of just watching the story unfold, we have to fill in the blanks ourselves. We have to use our imaginations. And when we do that, we become like co-creators of the story. We bring our own ideas to it.
It's like solving a puzzle, right? We're putting together these pieces of a lost world. And while we do that, we learn something new, not just about the film, but about ourselves too.
And I think that's really valuable, especially now. We're constantly being bombarded with information, complete stories. The Mechanical Man forces us to slow down, to really look at the details, to think about what we're seeing and hearing.
It shows us that not every story has a neat ending. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that leave us with questions, a sense of, I don't know, wonder, possibility.
Exactly. And I think it's time to move on to the last part of our deep dive. We can talk about the bigger implications of what we've learned about the Mechanical Man, what it tells us about how movies, even society, have changed.
Okay, so we've talked about the details of the Mechanical Man, right?
Right.
The plot, the characters, the whole historical context, even how it might have influenced Metropolis. But, like you said, the fact that we only have parts of the film, it adds something else to the whole thing. Like, we have to finish the story ourselves in our heads.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And filling in those gaps, it can be pretty cool, actually. It's like we're part of the storytelling, not just sitting back and watching.
It's almost like, I don't know, like we're working with the filmmakers. Even though it was made, what, like 100 years ago? We're bringing the Mechanical Man back to life.
I like that. And it shows us that there's not just one way to see any kind of art, whether it's a film, a painting, music, whatever. Everyone who sees it brings their own experiences, their own point of view, and that changes how they see it.
And that's especially true for silent films, like The Mechanical Man. There's no talking, right? So
Yeah.
you have to pay even more attention to what you see, how the actors are moving, what their faces are doing. You have to figure it out yourself.
Absolutely. And that focus on the visuals, it's something that connects the Mechanical Man to how movies have changed over time, even the films we watch now.
That's true. I mean, we have sound now, crazy special effects.
Yeah.
But telling a story with pictures, it's still at the heart of it all.
And I think the Mechanical Man, even though it's old and we don't have all of it, it still hits us on that visual level. Those images of the robots, so huge, the villain in her mask, all the scenes of chaos and destruction. It's powerful. It goes beyond time.
It's almost like, I don't know, we're tapping into something we all share. This fascination with technology, power, the unknown. It's been with us forever.
You got it. And that's why this deep dive is more than just about this one film. It's about the history of movies. It's about how much we love stories. And it's a reminder that even these broken pieces from the past can still teach us things about today, even about the future.
Yeah. And for me, one of the biggest things I've learned is that sometimes the best stories aren't the ones that tie everything up neatly. It's the ones that leave you thinking, wondering, imagining what could be.
You said it. The Mechanical Man, the way it is, incomplete. It's like a peek into a world that was changing, a world where technology was exciting and scary at the same time. And those same feelings, they're still with us today.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into The Mechanical Man, I feel grateful, not just for the people who made this film, but for the people who saved it. The archivists, the historians, they kept these pieces of our film history alive.
It makes you realize films are more than just entertainment. They show us our culture, our fears, our hopes. Every film, whether it's a huge blockbuster or a hidden gem like The Mechanical Man, it's part of this bigger conversation about who we are, where we're going.
And who knows what other amazing films are out there, just waiting for someone to find them, to see them with fresh eyes.
That's what's so great about film history. It never ends. And thanks to films like The Mechanical Man, we can keep exploring, keep learning, and keep remembering that the past is never really gone, as long as we're willing to look for it.
So until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions, and keep loving movies.